Okay, let's talk about over-the-counter drugs a little bit. The big example they give you in the beginning is St. John's wort. You have all these different supplements that basically claim health, to help in health in some way. The issue with that is supplements aren't regulated the same way. So, you guys can read through that whole process, and one of the things you have to answer is, what is that process? What's the difference, and how does the FDA kind of regulate these things? But my main thing that I want to say is you, again, read the labels, know what's in it, know what you're putting in your body, and make sure that you understand that on a lot of these supplements, health supplements, they have not been tested to the extreme that actual drugs that go through the process of becoming an over-the-counter drug or prescription drug have gone through. So a lot of times they make these claims and maybe they've done one study that shows, some type of a relationship or something like that. So be very, very, very careful when you're doing any type of supplement. Okay. And obviously, like we'll talk about over-the-counter drugs too, but in regards to supplements, educate yourself, know what the ingredients are, know how those affect your body. If you ever have any questions, ask a pharmacist, ask questions. Don't just take it based on what the label is telling you or what you see on a commercial. You got to be really, really careful about that kind of stuff. Let's see. They give you some common ones. You guys can look through those in the charts that they have there. But what you're going to notice is a lot of them, even though okay, let's pick one. Bitter orange. Talks about bitter orange. It's supposed to help with weight loss, nasal congestion, and allergies. Great. You look at the possible dangers. Fainting, heart rhythm disorders, heart attack, stroke, and death. Is it worth it? I don't know. And obviously, like any medicine you take is going to have some type of possible side effect. But again, if you're going to take something that has a possible side effect, would you not want to take something that has been through the most intense, rigorous process in regards to becoming, what it is, as opposed to something that is just claiming this should help with this, but these things might happen. So think about that. Has a whole box on male enhancement. You guys see those commercials all the time. So you can look through that little box, and that just is talking again about drugs in the media and how are we perpetuating these over-the-counter things, these supplements. Do they really work? Do they not really work? Is there any research on what the side effects are? And what are the side effects long-term? Again, a lot of these things, if they're just now coming out, there's no long-term research on them. So keep those things in mind. Ginkgo biloba was another really common extract that we talk about, supplement with memory and maybe blood thinner, things like that. So when you talk about these products, one of the big categories is weight loss. And you've actually seen in probably your time, ephedra was a huge thing. And then you started seeing a lot of issues come up from that. There was a huge, Herbalife was a big company. And I don't know, now it was almost so long ago. I don't know if you guys even remember hearing about it, but it was huge and a ton of people were taking it. And then they started to have issues. And now, obviously, they've taken ephedra out of a lot of these products. But you just got to be careful because when it came out, everybody thought it was awesome and it was all the rage and everybody started taking it. And then you started having all these major issues. When we look at over-the-counter products, there's more regulation to these products. They have to go through a process. And like I said, you guys can kind of work your way through that process. But again, remember, it's not going to be as detailed and as strict as prescription drugs. Now, a lot of times you have prescription drugs might be prescription drugs just because, again, fear of overuse, or they might be things that contain things that are illegal and can only be given out in certain amounts. So pain pills and things like that that have codeine or something like that in it. But really, that's the main thing. What is the active ingredient? And a lot of times the prescription drugs have more of the active ingredient. And over the counter is usually a lower dose. So you actually have prescription ibuprofen versus over the counter ibuprofen. Over the counter ibuprofen is usually sold in like 200 milligram tablets, and they tell you to take 1 to 2. Prescription ibuprofen a lot of times is sold in one tablet that gives you 100 milligrams, which would be like taking 4 of the over the counter ibuprofen. Okay, so keep those things in mind. You started to see in 2006 they revised one of the acts, the Patriot Act, and some of the, like pseudoephedrine, which is a lot of people take it for like a cold. They changed to what they call behind the counter drugs. So instead of, and like now a lot of times what you see when you go is you'll see a little card that'll say ask the pharmacist. So it's not a prescription drug. You don't have to have a prescription for it, but you actually have to get it from the pharmacist because those are things that can be used to make other drugs, or so like some of the things involved in making meth, some of those products that people use to make meth became behind the counter drugs because they wanted to see, they wanted to be able to check ages on who was buying these and things like that, so they can show identification, stuff like that. You've got the stimulants, which some of the stimulants we just mentioned in the last chapter because we were talking about caffeine. So you got things like NoDoz, Vivarin, which are caffeine related to help you stay awake. Again, you've got weight control products. So you've got things for sleeping. A lot of people take over-the-counter medicines for sleeping. Antihistamine is an active ingredient in a lot of those things, also in things like allergy medicine or cough cold products. You have what are called analgesics, which are involving pain. So then that's when you get into the things like that we're pretty common with aspirin. Is probably the biggest one and aspirin, people take aspirin for a lot of reasons. The biggest obviously is pain, but we also and you probably read in here sometimes as people get older they'll take aspirin, like an aspirin a day, to help thin their blood a little bit, so to try to prevent blood clots, or someone who has had heart issues, if they're not on an actual blood thinner, might take an aspirin to help keep their blood thin and to try to prevent any clotting or things like that. You've also got what are called not just analgesics but anti-inflammatory. So as an athlete and a coach, we tell our athletes a lot of times to use anti-inflammatories, not just to use something like an aspirin, because you want whatever, like if they're injured and they've hurt their ankle, the anti-inflammatory will also help with the swelling in whatever that area is that's hurt. So a lot of times when people, like if you are having pain from an injury or from working out or something like that, we're going to recommend an anti-inflammatory so that it'll actually work on the inflammation as well. Things like when you have like strep throat or swollen, anything where something is inflamed, anti-inflammatories are going to be recommended because it'll help with not just the pain, but it's going to help reduce some of that swelling. Antipyretic is fever reducing. So a lot of these medicines like ibuprofen, Aleve, things like that, have a combination of some of these things. So they'll be an anti-inflammatory. They'll also reduce fever. They'll also reduce pain. And so that's why they're probably one of the most common, over the counters that a lot of people take. Something to pay close attention to is on page 282. It talks about acetaminophen your liver. I remember when I was a college athlete and I had really bad knee issues with patella tendonitis, which is like jumper's knee. And I was taking probably 6 to 8 ibuprofen every time we had a game for sure, and sometimes for practice. And when I told my doctor that, he was like, "Oh my God, no." Some of those things can actually affect your liver, your stomach lining. They can eat away at some of those things. So you have to be really, really careful. And that's why with a lot of the medicines that you get, they tell you make sure you've eaten something, things like that, so that your body is processing it properly. So also keep those things in mind. Talked about aspirin. In the blood. Talked about acetaminophen, ibuprofen. Cold and allergy products. Some people very controversial on the cold and allergy products. I take an allergy pill every day. But a lot of times people come to colds, they just say if it's a virus, there's not a lot that you can really do for it. You need to drink a lot of fluids. But a lot of times when you're taking a cold or an allergy pill, the allergy actually, it works with the histamine and the antihistamine in your body to block some of the things. So basically when you're having an allergy attack, your body thinks that something very dangerous is coming into it and your body responds. So that's why like you sneeze because your body's trying to get it out, or your eyes are watering and itchy because it's trying to get those whatever it sees as a threat out of your body. So then when you take the medicine, basically it blocks some of those reactions, and so then your body's not having that overreaction to something that's not even really a threat. With the cold medicine, a lot of times what it's doing is just trying to help you with the symptoms so that your body can get rid of whatever is happening and it can fight it off. So it's just trying to help alleviate the cough, or it's trying to help alleviate the plugged sinuses or the runny nose while your body continues to fight off whatever it is and work through that process. One of the other things I asked you guys about, so again, we're not going to go into it too much right now, but was the looking at abuse of over-the-counter, and one of them being like things like cough syrup and kids drinking cough syrup and things like that. It's interesting when you talk about people who are alcoholics or recovering alcoholics, some of the things that you have to be careful about letting them have. And it's interesting because, like mouthwash has a little bit of alcohol in it, and still say make sure those people don't have access to mouthwash for a while or maybe ever, depending on how intense their addiction is. Same type of thing with cough syrup. People who are very desperate will do whatever they can. And think about it, if you don't have access, if you're not old enough, but you can go in and buy some cough syrup right off of the shelf, what are you gonna do? So I think it's important that we continue to educate ourselves about things like some of these over-the-counter drugs that are causing some issues. And that's why I kind of asked you guys, do you think everything should be prescription? And I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys have to say about some of that. Yeah, so that gives you a good breakdown of the over-the-counter medicines.